I stood under a crooked locust tree on Maishan Hill, staring at the branches in disbelief. Was this a joke? If I had to travel back in time, why couldn't I be the Changhua Emperor, or maybe Hongji or Jiajing? Even being a useless prince would have been better than this. Instead, I was stuck in the body of the unluckiest emperor in history. After wandering around in a daze for half an hour, the reality finally sank in. It was the 7th year of the Tianqi era. I had just ascended the throne as the Chongzhen Emperor. In my past life, I knew the history. People said Chongzhen was unlucky because he had the ambition to save the Ming dynasty but lacked the power to do it. Internal rebellions, foreign invasions, a corrupt court, and endless natural disasters. He struggled for 17 years before the empire collapsed anyway. He ended his life right here, hanging himself from this very tree on Maishan Hill. In my opinion, the Ming dynasty was practically toyed to death by the original Zhu Yujian. That might be an exaggeration, but if he hadn't been so self-destructive, the dynasty could have lasted at least another decade or two. "Someone come here," I shouted. "Chop this tree down." I paused, thinking better of it. Wait, forget it. Just lock it up with iron chains. I had wanted to destroy the tree to change my fate, but I realized that if I really wanted to hang myself, there were plenty of places in the Forbidden City to do it. Keeping it locked up would serve as a constant reminder of what awaited me if I failed. Behind me, my eunuch Wang Qingjin looked confused. He didn't understand why I'd give such a strange order, but to him, my word was law. He beckoned a young eunuch over and whispered the instructions. I sat down in a nearby pavilion, lost in thought. I still had 17 years. The foundation of the Ming dynasty was still there. Maybe, just maybe, I could save it. Since I couldn't change the fact that I was here, I had to adapt. I saw 3 paths ahead of me. I could be a faint-hearted ruler, a tyrant, or a wise sage. If I chose to be a faint-hearted ruler, I'd just pick a few more concubines, skip the morning court sessions, and enjoy 17 years of luxury before the end. It wouldn't be a bad way to go. If I chose to be a tyrant, I'd slaughter the factions, the Wei Zhongxian crowd, the Donglin party, and everyone secretly working with the Manchu invaders. I'd take them all down with me. But if I wanted to be a wise ruler, I'd have to rewrite history and extend the dynasty for centuries. Being a lazy, pleasure-seeking ruler was too dangerous. Out of the 16 Ming emperors, 10 died under suspicious circumstances. My own father died after taking red pill medicine from a eunuch at age 38. My brother fell off a boat, got sick, took immortal medicine, and died at 23. If I just fooled around, I'd probably end up accidentally drowned or poisoned within a year. Being a tyrant was also impossible for now. I didn't have control of the military. I could kill a few scholars, but the rest would kill me before I finished the job. As for being a wise ruler, the country was falling apart. Enemies were at the gates, traitors were in the court, and my orders couldn't even leave the city of Beijing. Any reform would hurt the interests of the powerful officials. If they united against me, I was finished. Faint-hearted didn't work. Tyrant didn't work. Wise ruler seemed impossible. This was a death trap. I felt a wave of despair. Even if the founding emperors came back to life, they'd have to walk on eggshells in this situation. During Chongzhen's 17-year reign, it was as if heaven itself wanted the Ming gone. Famines and plagues never stopped, especially in Shaanxi and Hunan. Internally, rebels like Li Ziqing and Zhang Xinzhong were rising. Externally, the Manchu barbarians were sweeping across the land, massacring millions. I thought about the future, the piles of white bones in the fields and the silence of 1,000 miles where no rooster crowed. My heart ached. Wang Qingjin watched me from a distance. He saw my face shift from deep thought to sorrow, from confusion to anger. To him, I was just a 17-year-old boy who had been thrust into a nightmare. He looked at me with genuine pity. I took a deep breath and calmed myself. Anger solved nothing. "Wang Qingjin," I called out. "How long has it been since I took the throne?" "Your Majesty, you ascended on the 24th day of the 8th month. Today is the 16th of the 9th month. It has been 23 days. I felt a slight relief, though my head still throbbed. According to history, the original Zhu Yujian hadn't moved against the powerful eunuch Wei Zhongxian yet. That meant Wei and his followers were still in power. Wei Zhongxian was a double-edged sword. As long as he was around, the scholar officials of the Donglin party were kept in check. He was also a genius at raising money. But he was a ticking bomb. He had hidden the news of the previous emperor's death and even tried to block my path during the coronation. He had his own ambitions. I knew that in a stable empire, I could kill him with a single decree. But right now, the cabinet would likely reject my orders. Wei controlled the secret police, the palace guards, and the internal treasury. He could turn me into dust whenever he wanted. In the original timeline, it took Chongjin 3 months of playing nice and bribing people before he finally maneuvered Wei Zhongxian out of power. I still had time. I didn't have a system or superpowers, but I had the records of history. I knew what would happen. I knew who the loyal ministers were and who the traitors were. With my modern knowledge and a broader perspective, I could fix this. I looked back at the locust tree, my eyes hardening. Zhu Yujian, you can rest in peace now, I whispered. I am taking over. From this moment on, I am the 16th emperor of the Ming dynasty. I made a vow right there. The people Zhu Yujian couldn't kill, I would kill. The things he couldn't do, I would do. If Li Ziqing and Zhang Xinzhong wanted to rebel, they'd have to see if I gave them the chance. If the invaders wanted to massacre my people, I would wipe them out first. The corrupt merchants selling secrets to the enemy? I'd seize their wealth and execute their bloodlines. The spineless scholars who betrayed the country? I'd turn their world upside down. Fate was in my hands now. I would make sure every citizen of the Ming lived with dignity. I would turn the northern tribes into our pastures and the western lands into our orchards. I would turn the southern kingdoms into our granaries and the coastal waters into our fishing grounds. I would make the world bow to the Ming once again and extend our reign for another 300 years. As I finished my silent oath, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I had a goal. The morning sun hit me, and for a moment, I felt untouchable. I wasn't going to be a tyrant in the cruel sense, but I was going to rule with an iron fist. From now on, the Ming dynasty would belong to me. As for the era name, it was already set. Chongjin it was. I had work to do. The era name was already set. I had arrived too late to change that. If I'd been here earlier, I would have chosen Qiansheng from the 4 options the cabinet presented. It sounded so much more powerful. But Chongjin wasn't bad. It implied a great restoration, the rebuilding of the Ming. Technically, it was still the 7th year of the Tianqi reign. My era name wouldn't officially start until next year. I turned and looked at the forbidden city bathed in the morning sun. Beyond the palace walls, the sprawling city of Beijing hummed with life as plumes of cooking smoke rose into the sky. If I hadn't come here, this place would be surrounded by invaders in 2 years. In a little over a decade, a plague would sweep through, killing 200,000 people in this city alone. But I was here now. From this moment on, the Ming was under my protection. Protecting it wouldn't be cheap or easy, though. Inside the palace, the eunuch Wei Zhongxian held terrifying power. Outside, the various political factions were busy deceiving the throne. The gentry were forming cliques for their own profit, even selling out the country's secrets. And beyond the borders, enemies watched us like hungry tigers, waiting for the Ming to fall. It was a mess. One wrong move, and I'd be joining my late brother in the afterlife. I had to guarantee my own safety before I could do anything else. I thought for a long time until a specific name came to mind. If I had this man by my side, I knew my life would be secure. Find me Dongfang Bubi, I said. Wang Qingjin blinked, his face a mask of pure confusion. Dongfang Bubi, he repeated. He looked like he thought I'd lost my mind. If a real person took a name that literally meant Invincible Orient, they were usually asking for a quick death. Your Majesty, is this a person or a place? Your servant is. I am. I waved my hand to cut him off. There is a eunuch in the palace named Fang Zhenghua. He's a master of martial arts. Find out where he's stationed and bring him to me immediately. I obey your command, Wang Qingjin replied. He was still puzzled, but my word was law. I took one last look at the morning sun over Beijing and headed back. When I reached the Palace of Heavenly Purity, I saw Zhou Yufeng standing by the gate. She was looking around anxiously, her face tight with worry. As soon as she saw me, she rushed over. Your Majesty, the morning air is cold and the dew is heavy. You haven't been well. Why did you go out? It's fine, I said, offering a small smile. The air is fresh. I feel much better after a walk. I'm sorry for worrying you, Empress. I looked at her closely. History books said she was beautiful and dignified, with skin like white jade. They weren't lying. In the original timeline, when the rebel Li Ziqing broke into Beijing, she had hanged herself just before the emperor did. Her final words were heartbreaking. She'd served him for 18 years, but he'd never listened to her advice. She was a woman of great character who died for her country. Now that I was here, that tragedy would never happen. After breakfast and a short chat with the empress, Wang Qingjin returned. He whispered that Fang Zhenghua was waiting outside the Eastern Warm Pavilion. I stood up instantly, suppressed my excitement, and walked over. Your servant, Fang Zhenghua, greets your majesty, a eunuch said, dropping to his knees as I entered. Rise, I said. Look at me. I studied him. He was tall with a steady face and bright, piercing eyes. The veins on the backs of his hands were prominent, showing a strength that didn't fit the typical image of a eunuch. He looked nervous under my intense gaze. Fang Zhenghua, I said calmly. I hear you are a master of martial arts. They say dozens of men can't get near you. Is that true? My words hit him like a thunderclap. He hit the floor again, trembling. Your Majesty, forgive me. I deserve death. Stand up, I said, feeling a bit frustrated by the constant kneeling. I want to see it for myself. If the rumors are true, I have a job for you. Are you brave enough to try? I knew his history. In the future, he would become a high-ranking official and die a hero's death, killing dozens of rebels with his own hands even when surrounded. Right now, he was in his 30s, his absolute prime. Some people even said he was the real-life inspiration for the legendary Dongfang Booby. I obey, he said, looking relieved. When it came to fighting, he clearly didn't fear anyone in this palace. An hour later, I arrived at the Capital Guard camp with a massive entourage. The scene was depressing. The guards at the gate were lounging around. The patrols looked weak. The soldiers in training were just going through the motions. I felt a flash of anger but kept my face neutral. The governor of the Capital Guards, Zhang Weixian, rushed over with a group of nobles to greet me. Governor Zhang Weixian greets your majesty. May you be in good health. Rise, Count of Britain, I said coolly. Deploy 100 soldiers from the Wu Jun battalion. I have a use for them. Wang Qingjin, go with them. Zhang Weixian didn't hesitate. He sent his son, Zhang Zhiji, to fetch the men. As they walked away, Zhang Zhiji tried to slip a bag of silver to Wang Qingjin, asking what I was up to. Wang Qingjin didn't even look at the money. Young lord, Wang Qingjin said dryly, we should hurry. It's bad to keep His Majesty waiting. In no time, over 100 soldiers were lined up at the martial arts field. I nodded to Wang Qingjin, who announced the rules of the trial. There was a 100-tael prize for victory. Anyone who could kill Fang Zhenghua in this mock battle would be promoted to a centurion. The soldiers cheered. Fang Zhenghua remained perfectly calm. Go, I commanded. The fight was a blur. Fang Zhenghua moved like a ghost among the soldiers. Every time his practice blade flashed, another man was forced to drop out. I was mesmerized. This was real kung fu. The action stars from my old world wouldn't have lasted a second against him. The man literally jumped 6 feet into the air from a standstill. In less than 15 minutes, it was over. Fang Zhenghua stood alone. I was thrilled, but I let my face turn cold. The governor and his generals looked like they wanted to crawl into a hole. Out of 112 soldiers, 63 had been killed according to the rules of the exercise. Count of Britain, I said, my voice icy. Your guards need more training. I have failed you. I deserve death. Zhang Weixian fell to his knees, his forehead hitting the dirt. I looked down at him. The man was an old fox, but I needed him for now. That's enough. I still need you to guard the capital. I turned and walked away. Return to the palace. Wang Qingjin shouted. As I left the camp, the generals remained on the ground, shouting their farewells. I had my bodyguard. Now, it was time to move on to the next target. As soon as I left, a group of generals swarmed around Zhang Weixian, the Count of Britain. Before they could utter a word, the old man snapped. Shut your mouths, he growled. Look at the mess you've made. A full company against one eunuch, and you lost 60 men? You've thrown my reputation in the dirt. Everyone, to my estate tonight for a meeting. Now get back to training. The generals scattered, terrified by his rage. Zhang Weixian stood there for a long time, staring toward the palace with a complicated look in his eyes. Back in the winter warming pavilion, I looked at Fang Zhenghua. "You've done well," I said. "I had other plans for you, but I have too few people I can actually trust. For now, stay by my side and guard me. Are you willing?" Fang Zhenghua threw himself to the floor. "I will serve your majesty until my dying breath." He hesitated for a second before continuing. "Master, in my spare time, I've trained 8 disciples. They aren't as skilled as I am, but they can easily take on 2 soldiers at once. If you need them, I can bring them in." "I need people who are absolutely loyal," I said, watching him closely. "There is no question of that," he replied firmly. "From the moment they entered the palace, I've drilled loyalty to the emperor and the great Ming into their souls. They would die for you without a second thought." I felt a wave of relief. If even half of my ministers had Fang Zhenghua's spirit, the rebels and the northern invaders would be a joke. With him and his disciples around, I wouldn't have to worry about someone sneaking into my bedroom at night or accidentally falling into a pond. "Fang Zhenghua," I whispered, "do you have a way to get out of the palace in secret? I mean a way that neither Wei Zhongxian nor the Donglin party will notice." He thought for a moment. "For 1 or 2 people, it shouldn't be a problem." "Good," I said, my heart racing. "Pick 2 disciples. Give them a secret imperial decree and have them ride day and night to Zhongzhou. They are to summon Qin Liangyu and her white pole spear soldiers to the capital. Tell her I am granting her the imperial sword. Anyone who dares to stand in her way is to be executed on the spot." I obey. "And when Qin Liangyu arrives, that is the day you take command of the Directorate of Royal Horses." Fang Zhenghua froze. He looked at me with pure disbelief. In the palace, the 2 most powerful departments were the Directorate of Ceremonies and the Directorate of Royal Horses. The first handled the paperwork and the eunuch hierarchy, but the second held the real teeth. They controlled the Tengxiang Guard, the emperor's personal elite army. "Lord Fang, aren't you going to thank His Majesty?" Wang Qingjin prompted with a smile. Fang Zhenghua slammed his head against the floor. "I thank your majesty for your heavenly grace. From this day on, I am the blade in your hand. I will kill whoever you tell me to kill. Don't just sit around," I told him. "Start digging into the Directorate of Royal Horses. Find out who's who, look for more experts, and bring me a plan. Wang Qingjin, go prepare the decree." I looked at them both, my expression grim. "Until Qin Liangyu receives this order, not a soul in the Grand Secretariat or the Ministry of War can know about this." They both nodded. Technically, because this decree wasn't going through the official ministerial channels, it was extra-legal. If the ministers found out, they'd use their power to block it before it even left the city. As they walked out, Wang Qingjin leaned toward Fang Zhenghua. "Congratulations, Lord Fang." "You're too kind, Chief Wang," Fang Zhenghua replied, his voice low. "We both serve the emperor. But listen, don't envy me, and don't envy the eunuchs who handle the paperwork. Our power comes entirely from the emperor. If he wants us dead, we're dead. You're his closest companion. Don't ever lose your way." Wang Qingjin stood frozen as cold sweat poured down his face. If Fang Zhenghua hadn't warned him, he might have let jealousy cloud his judgment. He bowed deeply to the warrior. "I won't forget this favor." Inside the pavilion, I tapped my fingers on the desk. To fix the world, I had to fix the palace first. To change anything, I had to stay alive. Right now, the palace was a sieve. Every word I said probably reached the ears of outsiders by dinner. I needed my own army. The Tengxiang Guard was my best shot. Most of the other 26 guards were now controlled by civil officials. Even the secret police, the Jinui, were currently led by Wei Zhongxian's cronies. I couldn't trust them. History said Wei Zhongxian had tried to hide the old emperor's death. He might have even tried to kill me on my way to the palace. I couldn't trust a man like that. I had to rebuild my own forces, even if the political parties fought me every step of the way. The biggest problem was money. I was basically broke. The palace treasury only had about 300,000 taels. It wasn't enough. It would take Qin Liangyu's mountain troops at least a month and a half to march 2,000 kilometers to Beijing. I had that much time to find money, identify my enemies, and start breaking the grip of the political factions. I sighed. If I had the absolute military power of the founding emperors, I'd just execute every corrupt official today. But I had to play the long game. The first 2 steps of my plan were in motion. Now, I just had to wait for Qin Liangyu. Wang Qingjin walked back in, holding the finished decree. Your Majesty, Wang Tiqian from the Directorate of Ceremonies, is waiting outside. Wang Qingjin stepped toward me, looking a bit flustered. He explained that when he went to get the imperial seals, the official in charge refused to hand them over. Not wanting to waste time, Wang Qingjin simply brought the man along with him. I felt a flash of frustration. This was the reality of the Ming dynasty. Power was split between the Directorate of Ceremonies and the Grand Secretariat. On paper, the emperor had absolute power, but in practice, the system was so bloated that my authority was actually at its weakest. Tell him to crawl in here, I said coldly. A moment later, Wang Tiqian entered. He hadn't even brought the seals with him yet. Before he could speak, my voice cut through the room like a blade. Wang Tiqian, I was starting to wonder, do I need your permission to use my own seals now? The man visibly shook. He hit the floor with a heavy thud, kneeling instantly. Your servant deserves death. I was only worried that Officer Wang might be faking your commands. Enough, I barked. You've confirmed it now. Get out of my sight. He scrambled out of the room as fast as his legs could carry him. I reviewed the decree one last time, pressed the seal firmly onto the paper, and handed it to Fang Zhenghua. Move quickly, I told him. He bowed and left to execute my orders. I turned my gaze to Wang Qingjin, who was still standing by. Old Wang, I've put Fang Zhenghua in charge of the imperial stables. You aren't upset about that, are you? Wang Qingjin's heart must have skipped a beat. He dropped to his knees immediately. Master, I wouldn't dare. We both serve you. As long as I take good care of you, my role is more important than any department head. I know my own limits. I'm good at small things, but I lack the vision for the big stuff. He looked up at me with genuine eyes. A man lives for 4 things: wealth, power, fame, and women. Money is useless to a man like me. Women? Well, I'm a eunuch. Power? My talent is average. That only leaves fame. You have the potential to be a legendary ruler. When that time comes, if the history books mention my name alongside yours, I'll be satisfied. I felt a wave of relief. I could hear the sincerity in his voice. You see things clearly. Stay loyal by my side, and I won't mistreat you. Stand up. Wang Qingjin looked happy, likely glad he'd listened to Fang Zhenghua's earlier advice. But before he could even get fully upright, my next question sent him crashing back to his knees. Old Wang, when you were at the training grounds today, did the Duke of Britain's son try to slip you some silver? He stammered, Master, young Lord Zhang did offer some, but I didn't dare take it. I blinked, surprised. You didn't take it? Next time someone offers you silver, take it. These people have more money than they know what to do with. Don't let it go to waste. Use it to help fund the internal treasury. And while you're at it, keep a list of who gives the most. I'll have a use for those names later. Wang Qingjin stared at me, completely stunned. He couldn't believe an emperor was telling his subordinate to accept bribes. It felt beneath the dignity of the throne. But I didn't care about dignity. The original Emperor Chongjin had cared about his reputation, and it had cost him everything. He'd been too proud to beg his ministers for money until it was too late. I was a soul from the 21st century. Dignity couldn't buy grain or pay soldiers. Know what to say and what to keep quiet. I dismissed him. Go. He walked out of the pavilion looking utterly confused. I had clearly broken his brain. Once I was alone, I pulled out a fresh sheet of paper. I thought for a long time before writing down 5 names: Gu Sili, Gao Shiming, Li Fengxiang, Chu Xianzhang, and Zhang Guiyuan. In the original history, these were the men who stayed and died fighting alongside Fang Zhenghua 17 years from now. My political skills might have been a work in progress, but my calligraphy was top tier, one of the few perks of this body. I added one more name to the list, Gao Yushuan. He was the last head of the Directorate of Ceremonies. When the rebels eventually breached the capital in the old timeline, he had prepared a coffin and a bonfire, choosing to burn alive rather than surrender. These men weren't perfect, but they were loyal to the death. When the time was right, I would bring them into my inner circle. Master, it's time for lunch, Wang Qingjin announced, returning to the room. I stopped my planning and headed to the central hall of the Palace of Heavenly Purity. A long table sat there, laden with 12 exquisite dishes: vinegar shrimp, roasted goose, lamb's head, steamed chicken with 5 spices, and more. Half an hour later, I was back in the warm pavilion, feeling a bit annoyed at the history books. They always claimed Chongjin was frugal. Compared to other emperors, maybe he was, but this meal was still ridiculous. Take the last dish, wild greens. The story goes that the emperor ate wild greens to experience the hardships of the common people. I asked Wang Qingjin how they were prepared. He told me they stuffed the greens inside a goose, boiled them in broth, washed them with wine, and mixed them with ginseng and deer antler. How is that experiencing hardship? No peasant in the world ate like that. It was absurd. But, I had to admit, it tasted incredible. After a short nap, I got back to work. I sat in silence for nearly an hour before I put pen to paper. If anyone had seen what I wrote, they would have been terrified. The heading read, The 10 Reasons for the Fall of the Ming Dynasty. 1. Merchants losing their moral compass. 2. The drain of fighting on 3 fronts. 3. Natural disasters. 4. The plague. 5. Lawless political infighting. 6. The rise of independent warlords. 7. The collapse of military ethics. 8. Scholars without shame. 9. The failure of the unified front. 10. The lack of centralized control. Individually, none of these would kill the empire. But stacked together, the original Chongjin never stood a chance. I ignored things like eunuch power or secret police corruption. Those were symptoms, not the disease. To me, the most urgent problems were the merchants, the three-front war, the political infighting, and the warlords. Take the merchants. There's a saying that for 300% profit, capital will trample all laws and even commit treason. That was the Ming Dynasty in a nutshell. The 8 great merchants were trading forbidden supplies to the enemy and acting as spies. I circled their names on my list. To me, they weren't just traitors. They were a massive pile of cash waiting to be seized. Then there was the war. I was fighting the later Jin in the north, rebels like Li Zicheng and Zhang Xinzhong internally, and Western powers were starting to eye the south. It was a sinking ship, and I was just plugging holes. The political fighting was even worse. The Donglin faction would oppose anything their rivals supported, regardless of whether it helped the country. They had no bottom line. And the warlords? By the end, the generals only moved if they were paid. If I didn't have silver, they wouldn't even listen to an imperial decree. When Beijing was eventually surrounded in the old history, Generals Wu Liangyu had 800,000 men and didn't lift a finger to help. I stared at the list, my mind racing. I knew exactly where I had to start. I wrote down name after name on the paper. With every stroke of the brush, my anger grew. After a long silence, I added 2 more words to the list, Imperial Clan. I would settle that debt slowly. I let out a long, heavy breath. At least it was currently the 7th year of the Tianqi reign. If I had traveled back to the 17th year of the Chongjin reign, I wouldn't have bothered with a list. I would have just found a sturdy branch on a tree and ended it myself. There would be no point in strategizing when the end was already there. The first year of my actual reign was going to be the real turning point. Famines in Shaanxi were already spreading, leading to massive peasant uprisings. Then there was a man named Li Zicheng, a simple post station worker who was about to start a rebellion that would shake the world. On top of that, mutinies were breaking out in the army. Worst of all, Huang Taiji of the later Jin was planning to bypass the Great Wall defenses and strike deep into the heart of the empire. That single war would kill off my best generals and change the fate of the Ming dynasty forever. I looked out the window. The sky was turning dark. Wang Qingjin entered and lit the lamps, filling the room with flickering orange light. I stared at the flame and whispered a poem to myself about the weight of history and the fleeting nature of life. Your Majesty, Tian Urjin, the commander of the Jinyui, seeks an audience, Wang Qingjin announced. Let him in, I said, covering my notes with a folder. Tian Urjin walked in and knelt. Greetings, Your Majesty. I have news. The generals of the 3 major Beijing camps entered the residence of the Duke of Ying, Zhang Weixian, earlier this evening. They were all wearing full armor. I narrowed my eyes. They weren't even trying to hide it. Entering a private residence in full battle gear was a blatant show of force. They were telling me that the Beijing army belonged to them, not the emperor. If it were official business, they would have met at the military camp. Your Majesty, Tian Urjin asked, should I send men to find out what they discussed? Are you teaching me how to do my job, I snapped. Tian Urgent hit the floor instantly. I deserve death. I wouldn't dare. I looked at him with a cold, blank expression. Inside, I was sneering. He did deserve death, and I wanted to be the one to do it. But I couldn't. Not yet. The Jinui were supposed to be the emperor's personal eyes and ears, but since the eunuch Wei Zhongxin took power, the entire leadership had flipped. Tian Urgent and his top officers were always dogs. The Duke of Ying is not your concern for now, I said. I've heard people are sending bribes to my father-in-law, Zhou Kuei. Investigate that instead. Now get out. Tian Urgent backed out of the room, his forehead drenched in sweat. He had met me several times since I took the throne a month ago, but he had never felt pressure like this. Once he was clear of the hall, he hurried toward the palace gates. He needed to talk to Wei Zhongxian. Something was wrong with the new emperor. I didn't care where he went. I had my own reasons for visiting the camps today. I needed to test the strength of my loyalist, Fang Zhenghua, and the Jinui weren't a good benchmark. I also needed to see the state of the army with my own eyes. It was worse than I thought. Old, weak, and useless. Finally, I wanted to send a signal to the political factions. I wanted the eunuch party and the Donglin faction to start fighting each other. When the dogs start biting, that's when I can strike. If the Duke of Ying thought his title and his help in putting me on the throne made him untouchable, he was dead wrong. The Beijing camps were the final shield for the capital. If I didn't fix them, I couldn't fix anything. I picked up the brush and wrote one more name, Li Banghua. To fix the military, I needed him. Even the great General Sun Qingzong wasn't as effective for this specific task. Is Fang Zhenghua back? I asked. Fang Zhenghua entered and started to kneel, but I waved him off. Skip the formalities in private. I need you to pick a trusted student. Give him my secret edict and have him bring Li Banghua to the capital in total secrecy. Fang Zhenghua paused. You mean the man Wei Zhongxin kicked out of the Ministry of War back in the 4th year of Tianqi? That's the one, I said. Bring him to me. Meanwhile, inside the Duke of Ying's mansion, the atmosphere was chaotic. A dozen generals were shouting over each other. What was the emperor doing today? One yelled. He should be dealing with the court officials, not coming to our camps. If he wanted to test a bodyguard's skill, he has the secret police for that, another added. What is he playing at? Enough. Zhang Weixian slammed his teacup onto the table. The room went silent. The emperor was giving us a warning. He's young and wants to change things. He's going to move against the camps. I don't care what corrupt things you've done in the past, but clean up your act now. Start training your men. If he catches you, I won't save you. The generals looked pale, but they didn't argue. Once they left, the duke's son, Zhang Zhiji, stepped forward. Father, is the little emperor really going to turn on us? Without our support, he wouldn't even be on that throne. Is he really that heartless? Slap. Zhang Weixian struck his son across the face. Don't ever call him the little emperor again. Do you want us all killed? No matter what you think of him, you keep your mouth shut and show respect. That is how you stay alive. The duke sighed, looking at his stunned son. Our family has held this title for 7 generations. We have the military power. He shouldn't move against us, but if we push him too far, he will start cutting off heads. Keep our people in line. Don't go looking for trouble. I understand, father, the son muttered. Zhang Weixian nodded, but his mind was racing. He felt a storm coming. The Beijing camps were a mess of conflicting interests and powerful families. If the emperor tried to fix them, it would be chaos. He just couldn't figure out where this young kid got the confidence to even try. Back in the palace, I worked until 9 in the evening. I had finally mapped out everything I knew, my safety, the military, and the enemies hiding in plain sight. The real war was just beginning. Military reform, land reform, foreign policy, economy, industry, agriculture, cultural development. I sat at my desk, connecting these dots into a master plan for the sustainable development of the great Ming dynasty. I was just about to dive into the details when a sudden commotion erupted outside. Before I could even call out, Wang Qingjin rushed in. His face was pale, twisted with pure terror. I frowned. What was he so panicked about? The emperor. He gasped, struggling to find his voice. A message just came from Xiqing Palace. The head eunuch, Chen Durun, forced his way inside. He intended to. Wang Qingjin stopped. He didn't dare finish the sentence. I bolted upright, a curse screaming in my mind. I had been so busy since I transmigrated that I completely forgot about Qin, the most lecherous eunuch in history. I couldn't sit still for another second. Wang Qinzhen, go to the Cunning Palace, I barked. Tell the Empress to go to Xiqing Palace immediately to stay with my sister-in-law. Tell her it's late and I want to avoid any gossip, but I will visit her tomorrow to pay my respects. I'll give her a full explanation then. I turned to my loyalist. Fang Zhenghua, take your men and drag Qin back here. I don't care who tries to stop you. Kill them. Do not let him speak to anyone, and don't let him commit suicide. I wasn't done. And bring me Wang Tiqian, Wei Zhongxian, Tian Urjin, and the commander on duty tonight. I want the head of the internal guards here now. A short while later, I stood outside the winter-warm pavilion in the Forbidden City. I stared toward Xiqing Palace, my hands clenched behind my back. My face was a mask of cold fury. A mere eunuch dared to reach his filthy hands into my inner palace? He was asking for death. As my anger simmered, a wave of confusion hit me. According to the history I knew, Qin break-in happened after Wei Zhongxian fell from power. In that timeline, he snuck in while the Empress Dowager Ian was bathing, trying to force himself on her. She fought him off, and the Emperor back then was too scared to kill him, simply sending him to guard tombs. Why was it happening now? Was it a butterfly effect from my arrival, or had this happened twice in the original history, and the Empress just kept it a secret the first time? The September night in Beijing was bone-chilling. I stood there in the silence, flanked by 4 burly eunuchs who gripped their long blades, the steel glinting under the lantern light. 15 minutes later, Wang Tiqian and Wei Zhongxian arrived and dropped to their knees. I ignored them. Another 15 minutes passed, and the Jinui commanders Tian Urjin and Su Xianshun arrived. They knelt, trembling, offering their greetings. I didn't even look at them. I let them sit there in the freezing silence. All 4 of them looked utterly bewildered. They had been pulled from their warm beds and rushed here, having no idea what storm was about to break. Finally, Fang Zhenghua returned. He was dragging a man bound tightly in ropes, dressed in plain clothes. Your Majesty, he announced, I have captured Qin. The names hit Tian Urjin and Su Xianshun like a physical blow. They knew exactly what kind of hobbies this head eunuch had. If the emperor was this angry, it meant Qin had harassed a woman in the palace. But they didn't see how it involved them. The Jinui handled palace security, sure, but they were responsible for the outer perimeters, not the inner quarters. Qin, I said, my voice low and dangerous. You have a lot of nerve. The eunuch looked up, trembling. Your Majesty, I wandered into Xiqing Palace by mistake. Please, forgive me. By mistake? I let out a sharp, cold laugh. Are you saying the Empress Dowager is framing you? Or are you calling me a fool? Wei Zhongxian, still kneeling, whispered, Your Majesty, perhaps there is more to this. Shut up, I roared, cutting him off. Did I ask you to speak? I looked at Fang Zhenghua. Take this dog down and torture him. I want every single one of his crimes written down. Use every method you know. Fang Zhenghua grabbed the eunuch by the hair and dragged him away. Seconds later, the scream started. Qin was a man of luxury, soft and pampered. He couldn't handle the pain. He started spilling everything. By the time the tea on my table had cooled, Fang Zhenghua returned with a stack of papers. I scanned the list, and my rage flared again. This man had married 9 wives. Not only that, he had affairs with dozens of palace maids. He had used his power to extort over 100,000 taels of silver. Tie him up, I commanded. I have a use for him tomorrow. If he dies tonight, I'll execute 3 generations of your families. Wang Qinzhen, take men and raid his house immediately. Kill the men, exile the women, and seize every coin for the treasury. And those maids he was involved with? Exile them all. I turned my gaze to the Jinui commanders, Tian Urjin and Su Xianshun. Was your bed warm tonight? I asked. I stepped forward and kicked Su Xianshun squarely in the chest, sending him sprawling. Someone broke into the Empress Dowager's palace, my own sister-in-law. What is the Jinui for? Are you waiting for someone to break into my bedroom and kill me before you show up? Your Majesty, the Jinui is only. Are you going to tell me you're only responsible for the perimeter? I sneered. Tell me then, what time are the genie doors and Longzong doors locked every afternoon? The color drained from their faces. Sweat poured down their foreheads. Chen Derun wasn't authorized to be in the inner palace. If the doors were locked, how did he get in? Your Majesty, it is a capital crime. They cried, banging their heads against the floor. We failed in our supervision. We will investigate immediately. I looked at Wang Qinjian. According to Ming law, how should these two be handled? Your Majesty, the Jinui are the Emperor's personal guards. Their life and death are in your hands. But for a failure like this, it is a death sentence. A death sentence, I repeated softly. Fang Zhenghua instantly unsheathed his long blade, stepping toward the two commanders. They began to wail, begging for mercy. Take them out and behead them, I said. As I spoke, I watched Wei Zhongxian out of the corner of my eye. These two were his men. I wanted to see if he would dare to protect them. Sure enough, Wei Zhongxian looked up. Your Majesty, may I say a few words? Speak. Your Majesty, there are over 14,000 eunuchs and 3,000 maids in this palace. It is impossible for the guards at the gates to know every face. A small oversight is natural. Furthermore, Chen Derun likely entered before the gates were locked. If you execute these two, it will cause panic among the Jinui ranks. It could lead to instability. The real responsibility lies with the internal guards who patrol the inner palace. They are the final line of defense, yet they noticed nothing. Their laziness is the true cause. Please, Your Majesty, spare their lives. I felt a cold smile tugging at my lips. What a load of nonsense. He was blaming the inner guards for a perimeter failure? And that line about instability, it was a blatant threat. Wei Zhongxian wasn't backing down. He was testing me. He thought he still held the leash. I knew exactly what Wei Zhongxian was doing. He had stayed loyal to the previous emperor, but a new ruler meant new rules. He understood that, yet he was still pushing back. He had spoken at length because Tian Urjin and Su Xianshun were his primary tools for controlling the Jinui. If they died, he lost his grip on the secret police. Being an emperor in this mess felt suffocating. I had inherited a rotting house with no one to trust. The suspicious deaths of my father and brother were constant reminders of what happened to rulers who weren't careful. I pretended to deliberate, keeping the room in a heavy silence. Finally, I spoke. I ordered every Jinui guard on duty at the gates to be stripped of their rank, banned from service forever, and given 20 lashes. Then, I turned my gaze to the two commanders. I told Tian Urjin and Su Xianshun that their failure was enough to justify executing their entire families. However, because of their loyalty and Wei Zhongxian's plea, I would spare their lives. But they wouldn't go unpunished. I demoted them both effectively to mid-level officers and ordered 20 strikes of the military baton. I also docked a full year of their pay. I looked directly at Wei Zhongxian. Are you satisfied with this result? I asked. He hesitated for a moment before bowing low. He said that both the emperor's thunderous wrath and his mercy were blessings. He thanked me for my grace. The two commanders looked relieved. They thought they had dodged a bullet. To them, a demotion was temporary, and 20 lashes from their own men would be nothing more than a performance. They had enough cronies in the ranks to make any new commander's life a living hell. As for the fine, it was pocket change. But they weren't finished yet. Fang Zhenghua, I said, you carry out the punishment personally. The color drained from their faces. Fang Zhenghua had killed over 60 men single-handedly at the military camps earlier that day. His strength was legendary. He was a true martial expert. If he swung the baton, 20 strikes would leave them bedridden for a month, even with their martial arts training. Fang Zhenghua stepped forward, his voice cold. Should I drag you out, or will you walk? They didn't say a word. They shuffled out toward the courtyard. Seconds later, their agonizing screams echoed through the palace. While the screams continued, I turned my attention to Wei Zhongxian and Wang Tiqian. I barked at Wang Tiqian, asking how he could claim to manage the palace directorates when such a breach occurred. Then I turned to Wei Zhongxian. Chen Derun was his man. This was his failure in discipline. They both turned pale. They tried to offer excuses, but I cut them off. I didn't want to hear it. I told them that Chen Derun would be executed the next morning. And I gave them a special task. They would be the executioners. Each of them had to carve 50 strokes into the traitor. If he died one stroke early, I promised to take the missing strokes out of their own skin. I didn't give them a chance to argue. I turned and walked into my private study. Once inside, I let out a long, shaky breath. My back was cold with sweat. If I had handled that poorly, Wei Zhongxian might have revolted right then and there. His warning about instability wasn't a joke. He was testing my resolve, seeing if I would bow to his influence. By forcing him to personally execute his own subordinate, I was asserting my dominance and terrifying the rest of the palace. Fang Zhenghua entered a moment later. He reported that he had hit them hard. They wouldn't be able to leave their beds for a month and wouldn't fully recover for 3. Perfect. That was exactly what I needed. With those 2 out of commission, I had a 1-month window to reshape the Jinui without their interference. By then, it was midnight. I was too exhausted to continue my development plans for the empire. I locked my notes in a golden chest, a primitive but effective safe that was nearly impossible to pick without the right sequence. I ordered guards to stay posted outside and let no one in without my express permission. I walked to the Cunning Palace and found Empress Zhou just returning from visiting the Empress Dowager. She massaged my temples, and for a moment, the weight of the empire felt lighter. She told me the Empress Dowager was shaken but safe and resting under heavy guard. I thanked her, and we retired for the night. The next morning, I slept until 8. After washing up, I headed straight for the Meridian Gate. The high-ranking officials and ministers were already there, whispering among themselves. They straightened up the moment I arrived. I told them I had invited them to watch a play. 2 guards dragged a screaming Chun Dirun forward. I signaled to Wei Zhongxian and Wang Tiqian to begin. Chun Dirun wailed, begging for mercy, then switched to cursing me. He called me a beast and screamed that he'd be waiting for me in hell. I told Wei Zhongxian to get on with it. As the head of the Eastern Depot, he knew exactly how to perform a slow execution. Slice by slice, the screams filled the square. The watching officials turned pale, their bodies trembling at the sight. After Wei Zhongxian finished his 50 strokes, they forced medicinal soup down the traitor's throat to keep him conscious for the next 50. When it was over, Fang Zhenghua stepped in. A flash of cold steel, and Chun Dirun's head went flying, landing right in the middle of the crowd of ministers. I told them the show was over and hoped they felt relaxed enough to get back to work. Then I turned and left. The officials stood there in a state of shock, horror, and silent rage. This was my warning to the eunuchs, the maids, and the ministers alike. I was a king who knew how to kill. As I walked away, I heard Wei Zhongxian's grim voice warning the ministers not to go poking their noses where they didn't belong if they wanted to stay alive. A few minutes later, I arrived at the Xiqing Palace. Empress Zhou and the Empress Dowager, Zhang Yin, were waiting at the door. When Zhang Yin bowed to me, I quickly told her to rise, insisting we were family. I couldn't help but be struck by her beauty. I had seen plenty of stars and models in my past life, but they were nothing compared to her. She had a grace and elegance that felt divine, with eyes like autumn ripples and a face that could have been carved from jade. I looked at my sister-in-law, Zhang Yan. Her features were striking, a sharp, noble nose and a perfect smile. She was truly one of the most beautiful women in history. Sister-in-law, I began softly. Last night was my oversight. I'm sorry you were frightened. I've already punished those involved. It won't happen again. She bowed her head gracefully. Thank you, Your Majesty, for seeking justice for me. I waved it off and sat down. Actually, I came here today because I wanted to have a real heart-to-heart talk with you. I saw the confusion in my wife's eyes and the slight flicker of tension on Zhang Yan's face. They were clearly overthinking things. I quickly cleared the air. I'm serious. I just need to talk. Fang Zhenghua, my loyal eunuch, stepped forward. Clear the hall, I ordered. I don't want anyone within 30 paces of this room. Anyone who dares to eavesdrop is to be killed on the spot. Fang Zhenghua nodded and waved his hand. The servants and maids scrambled out. Once we were alone, I looked Zhang Yin in the eye. Sister-in-law, tell me the truth. How do you see the current state of our empire? She turned pale and immediately dropped to her knees. Your Majesty, the inner palace must not interfere in politics. That is the law set by our ancestors. I dare not speak. Get up, I said, signaling my wife to help her. I felt a bit frustrated. Look, just treat this as a private family chat. Even commoners talk about the world behind closed doors, so why can't we? She remained silent, her face frozen in fear. I decided to change my approach. Do you think I'm weak? I asked. Are you disappointed that I didn't kill Wei Zhongxian last night when I had the chance? Before she could answer, I pressed on. I know what he and Lady Ku have done. I know they controlled the court. I know they caused the deaths of my brothers and sisters, and that they are the reason you can't have children. I know you want to eat their flesh and drink their blood, and I want that too. But do you understand the reality of the Ming dynasty right now? I started pacing, listing the rot eating my empire. First, the infighting. It's not just Wei Zhongxin's faction against the Donglan party. You have the Qi faction, the Chu faction, the Xin faction, all of them stabbing each other in the back for power while the country burns. Second, the treasury is empty. Third, the army is a joke. Generals are pocketing the pay for soldiers who don't even exist. They're becoming local warlords. The faces of both women grew paler with every word.